Hi, fifth grade. This is Mrs. Walsh, and we are doing Chapter 6, Lesson 13, Dividing Decimals. You should have started this with Mrs. Contreras on Lesson 11, so make sure that you've done Lesson 11 before you get started with Lesson 13. All right, let's see. Oh, you don't need to see me. Let's stop my video. There you go. We don't need to see that. Okay. All right, so our learning target today is I can divide decimals to 100ths using what I've learned about place value, and I can divide decimals by whole numbers. Make sure that when you're doing this, you really keep track of keeping your numbers lined up properly into their correct place values, okay? It's really important. So, this first example is Casey is 4 5/10 feet tall. Her brother Jerome is 6 75/100 feet tall. How many times taller is Jerome than Casey? So we need to find 6 75/100 divided by 4 5/10. So you need to remember multiplying by powers of 10 to be able to do this. So basically all you're going to do, let me get my little pointer tool. Okay, so all you really need to do is remember that we want to make our divisor a whole number. And we do that by moving our decimal point over as many places as we need to make it a whole number. So if we multiply 4 5/10 by 10, we get to move the decimal point over one place. Now, what we do to one side, we need to do to the other. So we are going to do the same thing. We're going to multiply this number by 10. So remember when we multiply by powers of 10, if you're multiplying it by 10, you move the decimal place one spot. If you multiply by 100, you move it 2 spots. How many zeros do you have? Okay, that's how many places you move the decimal point. However, the easiest thing for you to remember is, first of all, I've got to make this number here, my divisor, a whole number. How many places do I need to move the decimal point to make it a whole number? That's all I do. And then I have to do the exact same to this side, okay? So hopefully that makes sense. It will make more sense as we go through more problems, because I will be showing you how to do it. Okay, so another thing that we do with division is we just move our decimal point up right in the place value that it is for our problem into our answer. Okay, so now I have 45, so I have 67 5/10 divided by 45. That's our new number. How many times does 45 go into 67? It goes in one time. When I have 45 left over, now I'm going to subtract. 7 take away 5 is 2. 6 take away 4 is 2. And then I need to bring down my 5. How many times does 45 go into 225? Well, I'm kind of going to estimate here. I'm going to think, well, that's close to 50. That's close to 200. So I know that it goes in at least 4 times, but I'm going to allow for the little bit of extra here, the bigger number here and the smaller number here. I'm going to guess 5 times. So now remember, we're going to guess and check. So now I have to multiply and see if I'm kind of close to 5 times here. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 4 is 20, plus 2 is 225. I'm exact. It goes in exactly 5 times. Now, if I tried 4 and the number was too small, I just try again. Now I subtract. 5 times 45 is 225. And I subtract and I get 0. So my answer is 1.5 or 1 5/10. Now, you can always multiply to check your answer. Okay, so if you want to check your answer to make sure that we're right, we can multiply. 5 times 5 is 25. 5 times 1 is 5 plus 2. Okay, is 7. And then I have my 0 right here. 4 times 5 is 20. My 2 up there already. 4 times 1 is 4. 5, 6. Okay, and I add them up and I get 5, 7, 6. Can you guess what I forgot to do? I forgot to count how many numbers pass to the right of my decimal point I have. I have 1, 2, I've got 1 here. I've got 1 here. So I've got a total of 2. So now I have to put my decimal point in. I go 1, 2, 6.75 or 6 75 hundredths. Is that the number that we started with? Yes, it is. We started, if we go back, we started with 6 75 100ths. So you can see our formula works on how we do that. Okay, so let's start from scratch on a brand new one. So I need to find 6 hundredths times 1 5/10, oh sorry, divided by 1 5/10. So this is how I'm going to write it, 1.5 here. Okay, so now I need to move my decimal point to make this a whole number. I'm going to move it one place here. So I do the same on this side. I move it one place over there. Whatever I do on this side, I have to do the same to this side. So now I can rewrite it, and it's rewritten here as 6/10 divided by 15. Now I have a whole number. We move our decimal point up, and I can say how many times does 15 go into 0? 0 times. How many does 15 go into 6? 0 times. And if you look, if you think about it, our number was that, right? And if I do that, I don't have enough room because I got 0 here, I've got 0 here. Now, what do? I have to add a 0. So now I can say how many times does 15 go into 60, okay? And I happen to know that 15 goes into 60 exactly 4 times. 4 times 15 is 60. And then take away, left is 0. My answer is 4 100ths. Okay? Let's try some more. So right here, I want to make this number, my divisor, a whole number. So to make it a whole number, I move my decimal point over to here and I get 13. So now I've got 13. And then what I do to one side, I have to do to the other. So I've got 6 89 100ths. I move it one place. So I have 6, 68, and 9/10. So those are my two new numbers, okay? So now I move my decimal point right up here. We want to align our decimal points, the same place value, okay? So how many times does 13 go into 68? Well, now we have to do our estimating again here. And I'm going to think, well, it goes in at least 5 times because I've got 10 here and I've got 6 here. So I'm going to guess 5. Now, I may be wrong. It may be 6, but what I do is off to the side, I do my multiplication. Okay, 5 times 3 is 15. 5 times 1 is 5, plus 1 is 6. Okay, I'm really close, it's 65. So that's a really good number. Now I subtract, got 3 left over. I bring down my 9. How many times does 13 go into 39? Well, that's pretty easy. That goes exactly 3 times. So my answer is 5 and 3/10. Now, if I was to multiply 5 and 3/10 by 13, I would get the 6.89. Okay. Sorry. So you can always check your answer by multiplying. Okay, now let's do some more. Okay, so number 2, I have 66 hundredths divided by 3/10. Now I want to make these whole numbers. The divisor a whole number. So I'm going to move my decimal point over one place here. What I do to one side, I have to do to the other. I'm going to move it one place here. So my new equation is 6 and 6/10 divided by 3. Well, this one is really easy. How many times does 3 go into 6? 2 times. How many times does 3 go into 6? 2 times. My answer is 2 and 2/10. Okay, next one. Okay, now this one is a little bit more tricky. So I have to make my divisor a whole number. How many places do I need to move the decimal point to get it to a whole number? Well, I have to move it 1, 2 places to get the number 3. Okay, so now I have to do the same thing with 16 and 5/10. So let's have a look. I have to go 1, 2 places. So I have to fill in my empty numbers with a 0, okay? So now my answer is, or it's 1650 divided by 3, all right? So that is my new number. So now how many times is 3? And I have my decimal point right here. How many times does 3 go into 16? Well, I know it goes in 5 times. 5 times 3 is 15. Subtraction, I have 1. Then I bring down the 5. Now, how many times does 3 go into 15? Well, I know it goes in 5 times. 5 times 3 is 15. I have 0. And I bring down my 0. How many times does 3 go into 0? It goes in 0 times. So my answer is 550. Okay? Now the next one. All right, so now I have to make my divisor a whole number. I'm going to move my decimal point over one place. So now I've got 2. And this time I have to do the same for this one. I'm going to move it over one place. So now I have 4 and 62/100ths. I'm going to move my decimal point up. I have to line up our decimal points. How many times does 2 go into 4? 2 times. How many times does 2 go into 6? 3 times. How many does 2 go into 2? 1 time. My answer is 2 and 31/100ths. Okay, let's see how many more we have to do. All right, 3 more. Let's go. Okay, here we go on this one. We have to make our divisor a whole number, move it 1, 2 places to make this 12. And then this one, I'm going to move it 1, 2 places. Remember, I've got an empty number there. I'm going to add the 0. So now it's 1860 divided by 12. Okay. So how many times does 12 go into 18? 1 time. I'm going to put a decimal point here just in case we need it later. Okay, 1 times 12 is 12. I have 6. I bring down my 6. How many times does 12 go into 66? I am going to think about that. Well, 10, 20, 30, 40, 50 is 5 times. So I'm going to guess maybe 5 times. So let's do, what is 12 times 5? Well, 12 times 5 is 60. So yeah, I think I'm pretty accurate there. 5 times 12 is 60. And subtract, and I've got 6. And I bring down the 0, and look at that. How many times does 12 go into 60? Well, it goes in exactly 5 times. 5 times 12 is 60. And I have 0. So my answer is 155. Okay, so now number 6. We've got 7 100ths divided by 1 4/10. So I want to make this a whole number. So I'm going to move my decimal point over 1 place. And so now I've got to do the same thing with this one. So now my new number is 0, 7/10. Okay, because my new decimal point is right there. Move my decimal point up right here. So how many times does 14 go into 0? It doesn't, it goes into 0 times. How many times does 14 go into 7? 0 times. So now what I do, I've run out of numbers. I have to add a 0 here. So how many times does 14 go into 70? Well, let me think about it. Well, I got 12 going into 65 times. So I'm going to have a guess and think it's 5. So I'm going to do 14 times 5. 4 times 5 is 20. 5 times 1 is 5, 6, 7. Goes in exactly 5 times. That was a good guess. Okay, so my answer is 5 100ths. And our last one. So now, oh, look at this one. I got 2. I've got to move it over 2 places to get a whole number. So my new number is 4. And remember, what I do to one side, I have to do the other. So I've got to move this over 2 places as well. Okay, so my new number is 382 and 2/10. Don't know why I'm writing here at an angle. This is hard to do. All right, so I move my decimal point up right here. Keep our place value aligned. So how many times does 4 go into 3? 0. How many times does 4 go into 38? Well, that goes in 9 times, because I know 9 times 4 is 36. I subtract, I have 2 left, and I bring down my 2. How many times does 4 go into 22? Well, I know 4 times 5 is 20. So I'm going to put 5 here, right? And 4 times 5 is 20. I take away, and I've got 2 left, and I bring down my 2. I've got the same number here. How many times does 4 go into 22? Well, I know it goes in 5 times, because 5 times 4 is 20. And I subtract, I've got 2 left over. Now I have another number. We can't have remainders when we're dividing decimals. Remember, you cannot have a remainder when you divide decimals. So I'm going to add a 0 right there. Okay, I'm going to add my 0. We keep adding zeros until we get an answer. Whether you add 1 0, 2 0, 3 zeros, you have to add a 0 until you get a number that is divisible exactly, okay? So how many times is, sorry, bring down my 2, bring down my 0, bring down my 0. How many times does 4 go into 20? Well, it goes in exactly 5 times. 5 times 4 is 20. And I got 0 left. So my answer is 95 and 55 100ths. Okay, so to recap, remember, you have to make your divisor a whole number. You move your decimal point over how many times you have to until you get a whole number. It could be 1, it could be 2, it could be 3. Then whatever you do to one side, you have to do to the other, okay? So if you move it 1 time on one side, you move it 1 time on the other. And then you divide. Remember, you cannot have any remainders. And also remember to move your decimal point, align it, okay? You want to align your decimal point. No remainders. You keep adding zeros until you get exactly, okay? You can't have any remainders. So those are these steps for dividing decimals. Okay, so now what you need to do is complete your assignment on iReady and complete the reteach page and post it to your work on Class Dojo portfolio. You can also complete the Prodigy assignment. If you need help, you can rewatch the video. You can rewind it as many times as you want. You can write down your questions and ask them during office hours, and you can message your teacher on Dojo. So everyone, thank you very much for paying attention and listening. And then we will see you next time for our next math lesson.